Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. The topic of our today's lecture is nanotechnology in food packaging. So, as you all know, that food packaging is very important and very widespread in the world. And this is specifically centered to the countries that are more advanced as compared to the developing countries. So this means the people living in advanced countries, they prefer to use packaged food instead of using the open food. So packaged food around the world is considered more safe and more qualitative as compared to the open food. And this is why the companies that are dealing with the foodstuffs, they are continuously involved in order to improve the packaging material, in order to improve the packaging types of various food items. And our today's topic, or the topic that we are going to discuss today, is mostly dealing with the nanotechnology role in food packaging, that how nanotechnology could devise some tools in order to improve the food packaging and in order to monitor the contaminations that are present, that might be present in the foodstuffs. So before starting to discuss about the nanotechnology role in food packaging, first of all, we have to understand that how food packaging or how people involved in food packaging, they worked, that which characteristics should be involved in the packaged items. So we are going to discuss about some of the characteristics of the food packaging. So number one characteristic of the packaging material should be their strength. So this means the packaging materials should be strong enough to support the packaged items. I mean, if they are weaker packaged items, this means that there are greater chances that the packaged food material would be lost or that would be deteriorated. Then another characteristic of the packaged materials is their attraction. So, food companies are very much interested, they are always interested to improve the attraction of the packaged materials. And this is one characteristics that is thought to attract the end consumers, that is thought to attract the customers. So attraction of the packaged materials should be improved in order to make them more qualitative. And in the similar way, there is another characteristics of the packaged material, and that is their less weight. So it is always believed that the packaged materials in which the food items are packaged, that should be less in weight. So as less in weight the packaged material would be, there would be more easy to transport the food items, and there would be more easy to make the food items portable. And another characteristics of the packaging material is the monitoring of the contamination. So, the packaged materials should be able to monitor continuously the contamination of the packaged food items. So, uh, the quality of the packaged materials would be enhanced if they are able to monitor the contamination, if they are able to block the contamination that might happen with the passage of time. So this means that the more contamination blocking the packaging material is, the more qualitative it would be. So these are some of the common characteristics that packaging material should have in order to make the food items more qualitative, in order to make the food items more safer, and in order to make the food items more attractive to the customers. Now, now we are going to discuss what nanotechnology could play its role in order to improve the packaging materials, or in order to make the foodstuffs that are packaged in specific items more safer as compared to the traditional packaging items. How nanotechnology could improve the package materials, how nanotechnology could improve the characteristics of the packaged material in order to make the food items more safe, in order to make the food items more attractive, and in order to make the food items more accessible to the customers. So the first point is nanoplastic packaging. So you are very well aware of the fact that most of the food items nowadays, they are being packaged into the plastic materials. So whenever you go to the shops, whenever you go to the shopping malls, you see that the variety of the food items are being placed on the shelves, and that are packaged in the plastic materials. So this means that nanotechnology could have some applications in order to improve the strength, in order to improve the characteristics of the plastic material, so that the packaged items could be made more attractive. The plastic items could be made more safer for the end consumers. And for this purpose, what we can do is we can coat the plastic materials with the clay nanoparticles, right? So whenever we coat the plastic materials with the clay nanoparticles, what would happen that these clay nanoparticles would ultimately provide the strength to the plastic materials, and they would ultimately block the possible pores or possible passages in the plastic materials. And what would ultimately happen that the plastic materials would then be made of such characteristics that they would then block the entry of the oxygen, carbon dioxide, and moisture to the foodstuffs that are being packaged. So whenever we can block, if we can block the entry of the oxygen, carbon dioxide, and moisture into the packaged food items, what would happen that the contamination that might arise from the entry of the oxygen, carbon dioxide, or moisture uh, 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 might be avoided, and this means that the packaged food items could be made more safer. So here, the coated plastic materials, the plastic materials that are coated with the nanoparticles, they would be more advantageous to make the packaged food more safer as compared to the traditional plastic materials. And at the same time, the nanoparticle coated plastic materials would be more lighter, they would be more stronger, and they would be more resistant as compared to the traditional plastic packaged materials. So this means that the coating of the clay nanoparticles with the plastic materials would improve the strength, would impart the resistance, and would make the packaged materials more lighter than what they would be traditionally. And this means if we can make the nanoplastic packaging, then we can make the boiled bag food products. Boiled bag food products are those products that are actually the boiled food items packaged in the special packaging items. So here, if you can see this picture here, so if you can look at here, you see that the boiled rice are packaged in a boiled in bag. So this means that the boiled food items could be packaged in specific materials, and in order to use them instantly, and in order to make them more safer inside the packaged items. And at the same time, is the another advantage is the microwave food packages. So now, customers are demanding the ready to use food. The preference of the customer is the food that is ready to use, and that they purchase, and then they instantly consume the food items. So for this purpose, we can package the boiled bag food items, and we can also package the microwave food packages. So here, if you can see this picture, so this is the microwave food packages. So the purpose of microwave food packages is to package the food items that could be instantly microwaved and then is instantly consumed for uh, for food purposes. So this means nanoplastic packaging enable the plastic materials to make the boiled bag food products as well as to make the microwave food packages. Then number two, plastic bottles. So you see that traditionally and in the traditional items, few years back, if you go years back, what would you see? That the food items were mostly being packaged inside the glass bottles, right? But nowadays, what is happening that most of the food items, they are being stored inside the plastic bottles. So this means that the traditional glass bottles, traditionally glass bottles that were being used uh, for the packaging purposes, they are now being replaced by the plastic bottles. So now you see the food items are mostly packaged inside the plastic bottle. And the reason is these plastic bottles would be more safer as compared to the glass bottles. They are strong, and at the same time, if the bottle is fallen down, and there would be no chances of shattering the bottles. So this means that the plastic materials could also be used for packaging purposes as plastic bottles. So what we can do is we can also coat these plastic materials that are used in plastic bottles with clay nanoparticles. So once we coat the clay nanoparticles with those plastic materials that are used in plastic bottles, so what would ultimately happen that they would provide more strength to the plastic bottles, and ultimately if these plastic bottles will fallen down, or if there is some sort of an injury to the plastic bottles, what would happen that there would be no shattering of the plastic bottles. So this means that these clay nanoparticles would provide, as we have already discussed in the previous, in case of the plastic packaging, that they would block the entries of the oxygen inside the packaged food items, and they would also block the entry of the carbon dioxide, moisture. And if the entry of the oxygen, carbon dioxide, and moisture is blocked, then this means that the food items that are packaged inside the bottles, they would be more safer, and they would be more contamination free. And at the same time, these clay nanoparticle coated plastic bottles would also block the entry of the pathogens. So this means that the biological contamination may also be avoided by using these clay nanoparticle coated plastic bottles. Then, at the third point, we can use various nanosensors in order to monitor the contamination that might be present inside the large food lots in food processing industries. So in food processing industries, there are chances that there might be the contamination of various biological agents. For example, there are various foodborne pathogens that might cause contamination in large food lots. For example, salmonella, for example, listeria, and many fungal species that might grow in the large food items, and they might contaminate the food items. Then this means that in order to avoid these food contaminations, in order to avoid these biological food contaminations, what we can do is we should be able to detect these biological food contaminants. And for the detection of these biological food contaminants, we what we use is we mostly use the sensors in the large food processing industries. So in traditional food in traditional biosensors that are being used in food processing industries, there are some limitations that are associated with these traditional biosensors. And what are these limitations? That these traditional food contamination, food detection methods, they are either they are the culture-based methods. Culture-based methods mean what we have to do is we have to first monitor the contamination of the biological agents present in large food items by growing the specific microorganisms on the artificial media. Then this means that if we detect the contamination inside the food lot by growing the microorganism on artificial media, then this means that we require a lot of time. And at the same time, what what we traditionally use is the large biosensors. So uh, by using these large biosensors, they involve a huge amount of cost, and at the same time they are very difficult to transport from one place to another place. So in order to avoid the limitations, in order to avoid the problems that are associated with the traditional contamination detection methods or the traditional biosensors that are being used in large food processing industries, what we can do is we can use the nanosensors. So nanosensors are nanomaterial based sensors that could detect the very minute or very small amount of contamination in the form of odor, in the form of the production of gas, in the form of the taste that has been changed inside the large food lot. So this minute concentration of the change in odor, color, flavor could be detected by using these nanosensors that would be more sensitive as compared to the traditional large biosensors. So now we are going to discuss about these nanosensors. So the first nanosensor that is being commercially used in food processing in industries in order to monitor the contamination in the food lots is called as e-nose. So you are well aware of the word nose. Nose is an organ in human beings and animals. And this nose, the function of this nose is to smell something, is to detect the change of the order. So uh, this is the function of the human organ, that is nose. And e-nose stands for electronic nose, right? So this electronic nose is a nanosensor actually. And what is the function of this electronic nose? Its function is exactly this similar as the function of human nose is, right? So this electronic nose is able to detect a very small amount of odor in large food lots. So this means that a very small amount of order, even in 1 part in trillion parts. So this is a huge sensitivity that is associated with using the nanosensors. So it can detect the odor in very small amounts, and then it can analyze, it can do a chemical analysis of the odor for the identification of the biological contamination. So this means it will not only detect, it will also analyze the chemistry of the odor and would ultimately inform about the particular contaminant that is present in the large food lots. So electronic noses, as I already discussed, they are being used commercially and they are being used from so many years now. So now these electronic noses, the traditional electronic noses, are being replaced by the electronic noses that are more sensitive, and that are more smaller in size. So these would be the more sensitive electronic noses. So these nano-based electronic noses, which are small in size and which are more sensitive, they could be used in order to monitor even a very less concentration of the odor, even a very less concentration of the contamination that might have been produced in the food items. Then another type of nanosensor that is being used in the food industries in order to detect the contamination present in the food industries is called as e-tongue, right? So tongue, this is another organ present in human beings and animals. So its function is to taste something, right? Human tongue functions as tasting something. So whenever we eat something, what happens that we can easily taste, we can easily detect that either the thing that we are going to eat is salty, is sweet, is sour, is it's bitter. So we can easily detect the taste that we are going to eat with the help of the tongue. And this is due to the fact that the human tongue contains a huge number of taste buds. So these taste buds, each of these taste buds is able to specifically detect, the specific tastes that are present in the items that we are going to eat. So in a similar fashion, the electronic tongue works. The function of the electronic tongue is to specifically detect the taste, is to specifically detect the flavor that might have been produced in the as a result of the contamination in the large food items. So this means that this nanosensor could be used in order to detect a very less quantity, a very little quantity of the change in order and the change in taste or the change in flavor uh, that has been produced due to the contamination in the food plots. So these electronic tongues, these nanosensors, these type of nanosensors, they are made up of silicon chips, right? So this is a silicon chip, and this silicon chip is actually coated with a huge number of microbeads. So the function of these beads is exactly similar to the function of the human tongues, right? So function of microbeads, is exactly similar to the function of the taste buds that are present on the human tongues. So this means that each of the bead that is coated on the silicon chip would specifically detect the particular flavor or a particular taste that has been produced as a result of the contamination in the food lots. So this is the intensity of the sensitivity that could be obtained by using these electronic tongues. Then another type of nanosensor that could be used in order to detect the contamination in the food is called as nano-barcode. So nano-barcodes are those nanosensors that are mostly used to detect the contamination in packaged food. So this is mostly associated with the packaged food. So you are well aware of the barcodes. So if you see this picture here, you can see this barcode that is present on the food item, right? So the function of this traditional barcode is to specifically fingerprint the price of the specific food item. So for example, if you go to a large shopping mall, you purchase so many things and you see that there are so many things that are present in uh, kinds of uh, various kinds of packaging. So you purchase a variety of food items and you go to the counter, and then what happens that at the counter, this barcode present on each of the food item could be read by using a machine. So this means whenever this barcode is read, you can see the price of that specific item on the screen. So in a similar fashion, we can use the nano barcodes. So these nano barcodes, exactly like the traditional barcodes, they would be the fingerprints on the food items. So we could be able to read these fingerprints the function of these nano barcodes would be to specifically recognize the chemical fingerprints. So these would be the chemical fingerprints, and uh, that were actually made by the metal nanoparticles, right? So these chemical fingerprints, what would they do? They could specifically detect if there is any type of order change, if there is any type of biological contamination, if there is any type of taste change that has been produced inside the food items. So once we use these barcodes, these barcodes would then be easily read by the ultraviolet lamps, and they could be read by the optical microscope. So the purpose of reading is to inform the end consumers, is to inform the customers about not only about the price of the food items, but also the quality of the food items. So this means they could easily detect the quality. Either the food items are safe to be used, either the food items are safe to be purchased by the customers, or they are contaminated. So this would be the added advantage of the nano barcodes over the traditional barcodes. So this is all about the role of nanotechnology in food packaging. And this is all about today's lecture. Now, if you have any question, you can ask.